So there really isn't this overriding goal to make people healthier. And that's kind of why I came to the VA was there's more diabetes, more obesity in veterans than non-veterans. And you're like, what the heck? Right? These people used to be uber fit. Why is there more diabetes and obesity in this group than civilians? Like, what the hell? What are we doing wrong? So I was brought into the VA, was actually recruited there to help make veterans healthier. And that's the paper that'll be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So let's teach them metabolic health. Let's not just follow an
Yeah.
algorithm of giving them more and more and more meds and fit these checklists. That's what I did. And that was really not viewed well in the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I left.
We're bringing healthy back. Them other bros don't know about the facts. Welcome, everyone, to the Magic of Metabolic Health podcast, episode 24, where optimized metabolic health is our goal, and we are here to get you there. My name is Amelia Wood, and I am a food-first personal trainer and metabolic health coach. And today, we have Dr. Fumi in the studio. Hey, Fumi.
Hey.
And our very special guest, Dr. Mark Cucuzzella. Hello,
A
Mark.
pleasure to be here.
Hey.
You all
Nice
are
to
fun
see you.
people in the tribe, so
We
look
like
forward
to
to
have
the
fun.
conversation.
We got to make health fun. And if you haven't heard our intro to the podcast, it's all about bringing healthy back, but in the vein of a certain someone who used a different word in that phrase. Do you know what I'm talking about?
We can't copyright. We can't even say it.
Yeah. Well, we made a parody of it, so I think it's legit. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So we're going to do a little bio here for Dr. Mark. He is an Air Force Reserve Lieutenant Colonel, retired, now practicing in rural Northern Maine. As a former professor at West Virginia University School of Medicine, Mark developed and adopted an inpatient protocol for using a low-carb diet for patients with obesity, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes. Practicing what they preach, the hospital eliminated all sugar-sweetened beverages from the hospital. Mark was instrumental in bringing med chefs to the WVU School of Medicine in 2014 with a focus on understanding insulin resistance. An advocate for evidence-based policy and education, Mark is a founding member of the Nutrition Coalition, a board member of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, and the Hypoglycemia Foundation, as well as on the advisory committee for the Coalition for Metabolic Health. Mark's current research interests are diabetes remission, the use of continuous glucose monitors, and carbohydrate reduction for severe pediatric obesity. He also leads a clinical group, International Multidisciplinary Diabetes Remission Working Group, who just completed a textbook chapter for ketogenics on medication reduction in type 2 diabetes, adapted from the article Adapting Medication for Type 2 Diabetes to a Low Carbohydrate Diet. Woo! You are a busy man.
Oh my goodness.
It's all teamwork. Every project we've done involves partners and reading and learning and sharing ideas, and then you kind of go all in and you try to make change. If you're in
Exactly.
the military, it's like you're the Marines, right? You go in with everything you got, right? And sometimes you fail and you get pushback, but it's never an easy fight. But
Right. It's all
you're
about
in
the
it to win
village,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Building community. And as we always say at the Magic of Metabolic Health, we are building a village that encompasses every part of who you are. We release guilt and shame and the quest for perfection and show you how self-efficacy and knowing your why are crucial tools in sustainable behavior change and optimizing your metabolic health. So we know you're on that page, Dr. Mark, and I can't wait to get into it. So, first question we always ask our guests is, where did you grow up and what kind of food culture or food, I guess, did you eat as a child? What were your family's values around food?
Yes, I grew up in Maryland, in Ellicott City, Maryland. At that time, it was pretty rural, and just like all areas in the Baltimore D.C. area now, it's exploded. It's all big suburbs. But I was traditional Italian family. My grandparents were immigrants, and my parents Italian. They were first gen. So we lived pretty much the standard one of four boys, so we ate everything in sight. And my mother stayed home because we were four boys, and it probably was a full time job just to feed us. We were all very active in sports. Primarily, we all ultimately got into running because that was kind of our skill set. As you can see, I'm 5'8" and a buck 40. I played football up through middle school, and then the sport outgrew me, but I was like the fastest kid on the football team, so they lined me up for a cross country race. So I became a cross country runner and not a football running back. I would have got squashed at the high school level. But in those days, it was like carbohydrates, carbohydrates. So we could eat mounds of pasta and pizza. I was Italian. So that's just how we rolled. And that nothing abnormal about that. There was no junk food. McDonald's would have been, I was born in 1966. So, a meal at McDonald's was like a treat. Like if you won the Little League World Championship, you went to McDonald's and you got those little French fries in that little pouch. And they were fried in like a beef tallow at that time. And they were magically delicious. So, but that wasn't, and like if you got a Coke, which again was like, Coca Cola would have been a treat. It wasn't like your mom came home from the grocery store with 12 packs of soda, right? Like they had this one size, and you get, oh wow, Coca Cola. You get it in whatever cup it was. And that was a treat, right? And that was like, I remember too, we had these things called Slurpees, which was like the sugar drink that give you the brain freeze. And if I had a good report card, which was twice a year, right, we would go get Slurpees, which was like the sugar bomb, but we loved it. But that was twice a year with a good report card. Again, one size, brain freeze. But that was, I mean, just it's just kind of relevant to today, Amelia and Fumi. So mom, four kids. Our backyard was the baseball field, the football field, whatever. See the basketball court, and the had that on in the driveway. But she was like the Kool Aid mom. Technically, every now and then she would make Kool Aid, and we had these little Dixie cups, right? And that was it. Right? It'd be the little Coleman thermos, the little Dixie cup, and that was wow. That was like nirvana, right? But that was about all the sugar drinks, and that was normal. We had. I don't know if people still have these at home. They're probably all at Goodwill now. We had these things called juice glasses. Do you know what a juice glass is?
Do they have the print of the fruit on them?
No, no. A juice glass is like this little glass,
Oh,
right? So, like, if
oh,
you
my
ask your
grandparents had
mother,
them. Yeah.
yeah, ask your grandmother what it is. So the juice glass now we would call a shot glass because that's about the size of it, right? Because we never had like if you had juice, right? It was real orange juice, right? Like it was concentrated, but you wouldn't have like the big pint glass of juice. It was a juice glass, and I didn't make that up, but that's what it was called, and we would use it. So if I went to school and we had orange juice, that was the glass that we had orange juice. And I don't know, what are they, 5 ounce glass or 4 ounce? How much carbohydrate is in that? It's probably 15 grams of carbs. But now they have
Right.
12 ounces of
Hmm.
juice like substance. I know, but we don't have to. But that was my growing up in the 70s. So I was born in 1966. I was a kid of the 70s.
Yeah,
Music was really good then too.
I
Everything
agree.
has changed since that decade. Now that like nowadays we essentially eat fast food every day, and we're also drinking not real juice, but artificial juice at the like at by the gallons, and things have changed a lot since that time. How do you think that that has like affected your overall outlook?
Well, I think everything old school is the best school. So, like, most of my patients I see now here in Northern Maine are retired. A lot of Medicare. Probably the average age of the patient walking into my clinic is 70 years old. You're doing hospital medicine from what the average age of your inpatients is what? And what's the average age of
60s, that's when they start seeing,
yeah,
break down their
70s,
health.
80s?
It's like
Yeah, they all got
really,
diabetes now, and I say just do what you did when you were a kid. They remember juice glasses, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like if you're ever going to have any sugar drink, you probably shouldn't." But that is the most, and that was a treat, right? It wasn't like every day you'd have that. Maybe you'd go to your grandmother's and she had fresh squeezed juice. So like all of this reconnects with the population of that generation, that were who were 60, 70, 80. They're like, oh yeah, that's how my grandparents ate. They ate meat. They ate eggs. They didn't throw the yolk away, right? They didn't, have bread at every meal. Yeah. So I think it just everything. I mean, it's the upside down new food pyramid. I mean, that's nothing radical about that. That's just how we've always eaten until the government told us in 1980, well, don't eat how your grandparents ate, eat how the government wants you to eat. Don't eat the eggs, eat the grains. I mean, you've talked about this on your podcast, right? And that experiment didn't work out very well. And it's all culturally relevant. You're in New York, right? So every patient you see has a different culture and a different way they ate, but it was all traditional foods, right? So you don't tell someone, from South Pacific Islands that they should eat a Mediterranean diet, whatever that is. Like, because there's 21 countries around the Mediterranean. I mean, they're looking at you like, what do you mean? Like,
What do
this
you
is what
even
my
mean by
family eats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what is the Mediterranean diet? I've
Yeah.
had that
Like,
question multiple, even from
yeah.
people
Well,
who
there isn't.
There
If you go
isn't.
to the
what is
Mediterranean
that
Sea
diet?
and you tell them what the American Mediterranean diet is, they're like, well, I don't understand that. I don't eat any of those things. So it all depends on the season. But
Right.
yeah, this is common sense is not common these days. But you bring it back to people's values and their traditions. And then what they do is not difficult. It's just what they've learned and unlearned and relearned again.
Yeah, culture is something that we talk a lot about on the podcast because for me as a personal trainer and coach, I always have to consider the mind, body, and culture of metabolic health because we don't live in a vacuum and it doesn't matter how determined I am individually. I'm going to be impacted by my environment. I'm going to be influenced by my culture, whether it's a culture I accept and adore or I loathe, right? Culture is so important, whether it's our family culture, our societal culture, our school culture, our work culture, our religious culture, right? Where we have established really important traditions. And I'm curious how you have, Mark, developed maybe alternatives or modifications to your celebratory traditions. For example, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, anniversaries, a Friday night, right? It doesn't have to be a big, big holiday, but there's a lot of traditions culturally in the US that just, like Fumi was saying, we have an opportunity to eat fast food every day. We have an opportunity to treat ourselves every day. We get a good score on a test or we, get a promotion or our best friend gets married. I mean, there's always a reason to celebrate, which I don't ever want to knock, right? I always want people, my clients to understand I'm not here to to rain on your parade. I'm not here to make
Exactly.
health miserable. Like I want you to be healthy and happy, which means you still have to eat things that you enjoy, but how do you personally do that? How have you explored that with your family or community, you know?
Yeah, and I think probably why a lot of people see you, Amelia, or from you in the hospital, you have a medical crisis, and like this is staring right at you right now, and you have to make a decision because if you're not healthy, it's going to affect your quality of life, your jobs. I was in the military, and I was diagnosed with what's called LADA, which is insulin insufficiency. So I became in the type 1 spectrum and would have been medically boarded, but I understood the carbohydrates and the metabolism in the food. So I was still running and eating a lot of carbohydrates when I had an A1C in the diabetes range. And to keep my military commission, I had to basically become non diabetic because if you're diabetic, you're medically boarded. And the only way to be non diabetic is to have a normal A1C or less than 6.5. Right? You could still be they didn't consider pre diabetes or 6.2 diabetes, but if I could get it less than 6.5 and not be on medicine, I'm fine. Like I'm not, so that's what I did. And that changed my life. But it took a while before I would like suggest anyone else would do that because I was, just kind of hacking my own system
And
to
how did
keep.
you do
But I've
that
been,
exactly?
That's
yeah,
right.
I did that by turning the food pyramid upside down. So I
Mm.
was involved at the time, I was involved in the military fitness test and helping people pass their PT test. And I had a bias when I had a 6 month assignment to kind of dig into why people didn't pass the test and traveled to military bases all over the world trying to help people who failed the test. And but I before I would go out and try to teach, I had like 2 months just to look at data. Like, okay, let's try to root cause why people failed the test. And I noticed that the main driver of fitness test failures was their BMI. I mean, they all did PT. It wasn't that they didn't run enough, right? It's like there's something about obesity that's driving it. So then I needed to understand obesity. And crazy as it is, like you think of these Damascene moments, right? Like these moments that are like, change you. So I'm just the internet was pretty early in those days. So I came across an article in the New York Times by Gary Taubes. It was called, it was what was the name of that art? It was in the New York Times Magazine. Maybe it's all been a big fat lie. I think was the name of the article. And I opened that article and I was like, this makes sense. It was a pretty deep article about the Atkins diet. It was about Gary Taubes. He's like, well, we got that obesity all wrong. And I've been, living in West Virginia, working with military. I'm like, I think this guy's right. So then I bought his book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, which is like a tome with 450 pages, 1,000. So I've read that like 3 times. And I said, I think this guy's right. And then I went to these military bases, Amelia and Funmi, and I would ask the question. They'd be sitting in a bleacher, all the fitness test failures, and they're like, why is this guy, they don't want to be there. And, you have to have fun with it. And I said, look, I'm not going to talk about running at all. I just want to talk about this. I'm going to ask you all one question. Has anyone lost 50 pounds and kept it off for a year? And you look around left to right, and there's, one person in the back would kind of reluctantly raise their hand. He'd be like, he'd be in Germany. Like, what did you do, Airman Smith? And they're like, well, I got rid of bread. Next base. Well, I got rid of all the soda. Next base. Well, I did this thing called, they're afraid to tell you because they think I would yell at them. They'd say, I did this thing called Atkins. And they're, and I was like, because they're afraid to say it because they're a doc, right? Because they were doing it all rogue. Or they would say, I'm doing paleo. And in the late 1990s or early 2000s, paleo was not like paleo junk food at the Whole Foods. It was like they ate meat and vegetables, right? That was paleo before it became a marketed product. But not once did anyone say, well, I'm eating the American Heart Association. So that was kind of validation that, what I'm learning in my own body is not crazy. And you're kind of like come out, right? It's almost like all of you, right? You kind of like, do I talk about this at academic institutions? Very gingerly at first, right? And
Yeah.
then we actually that med chef. So I wrote a grant in 2012 or 13 teaching medical students insulin resistance. Robert Lustig was Bob Lustig, the leader and all this, was a partner in that grant. And now, with HHS, they're talking about, I think 53 medical schools have committed to 40 hours of nutrition education. So what we were doing in 2012 is actually now, and I hope that 40 hours of nutrition education includes insulin resistance. Because if they just get educated wrong for 40 hours, that just reinforces wrong. So like to me, I don't know if that's a win or a loss. I need to see, and I've actually thrown my name in the hat. I'm like, if you guys want any help with this, I'll help. But I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know who's running that show, and it's all kind of. But like we're here, right? Like if you want our opinion, we have experience. We're here to help, but we're not. I'm not going to go to Washington and hold a sign up and say what we do is the best.
Sure.
I just want people to see the results and have various ways of eating. The 10-page summary of the dietary guidelines on page 8 was the magic sentence, which said, it's the only way of eating that was actually pulled out because the evidence was so strong. They had to pull it out and highlight this specific way of eating in the dietary guidelines. It said something to the tune of, for specific chronic medical conditions, you may benefit from lowering your carbohydrates. Talk to your doctor.
Mm-hmm. And that was taken
Yes.
out.
Yeah, no, that's in the document now.
It's
That's
in there
that's in
now.
the
Okay.
dietary guidelines. The 10-page summary is that sentence, which took a lot of political pushback to get that sentence in there because you can't deny that sentence. There's thousands of articles adding scientific validity to that sentence. Certain chronic conditions, i.e., like diabetes, they say may benefit, right? Okay, well, that's government speak. Yes, it will benefit.
Will
Talk to your
benefit.
doctor.
This is so important that you're
It's
mentioning.
so it's important. That one sentence is like really important.
Huge. Just like
AJ,
sentence is like monumental. And this is definitely a step in the right direction. And then I
absolutely.
remember those early days where you couldn't say Atkins without looking like a crazy person because we're like, what do you
Now
mean
you
you're
say, look, it's in the
what do you
federal
mean you're only
guidelines.
eating meat and veggies? So what do you mean that you've cut out all carbs? What do you mean that you're counting your that like what do you mean? Because it was just such a monumental, a weird thing to do, a risky thing to do. And so you were definitely one of the early adopters who was able to kind of say, "Hey, maybe we did get this thing wrong, and maybe we should be looking at rectifying this." And even now, as we are in the process of rectifying it, it's still quite difficult. It is very difficult.
Difficult.
Yeah, and I think about how you have transitioned to kind of a different lifestyle in your career. You're still a doctor, so you haven't changed careers, but you have made a very conscious decision to physically remove yourself, but also, I think you've taken on a different role in the community, and I know it's been really a hard road for you, and I want to acknowledge that uh, you were part of our first episode, The Magic of Metabolic Health. Even though you weren't there live, we sent you a question to define metabolic health in 5 words or less.
Right.
And I am so happy that we're coming full circle now that we can actually have you on the show
What did
because
I say in those 5 words? Not that you know. I mean, it's
I
so
knew you were
long
going to
ago.
ask
You
that.
like,
Long
hopefully,
couple of
I should
years.
have looked it up
yeah.
earlier.
We'll look it up later because
But
yeah,
yeah,
there's nothing new under the sun. It's
yeah. But
been teaching.
it just shows that despite the obstacles, right? Despite the culture that I don't want to say we're fighting against because we're all part of it, right? We're all inside this culture. But despite the struggles, you're persevering. And I wanted to ask you specifically there it's kind of a two-part question. How as a veteran and growing up in the military culture, how has that influenced your work now? Because I don't know why you went into the military. If you want to share that, you can. But how did you evolve as not just being in the military, serving in the military, but then becoming a doctor and now doing what you do with veterans? Can you share a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, well, probably like a lot of people who want to go to medical school. I get accepted to medical school, and tell my dad, I got into medical school, and it's like that's fine, but didn't have any money to pay for it.
Who's gonna pay
So,
for it? That's always the issue.
and so no one in my family was like, I didn't come from one of these military families. My dad was a small businessman. And then I saw like some signs, some posters about, you don't have money for medical school. You can join the Army, you can join the Navy, join the Air Force. They're interviewing people. They're called HPSP scholarships, where they pay for your medical school and then you owe them time, right? So and so I interviewed, and they want to pay for your medical school, and I go to my dad, and I'm like, well, I could join the Navy, the Army, or the Air Force. He says, well, I think the Air Force has nicer bases, and they sleep in hotels most of the time. So it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I joined the Air Force, right? So I'm like, yeah, that sounds better to me, right? Look, it's like a little better living than being sleeping in a tent for 6 months at a time. So that was my origin. I didn't come from like Chuck Yeager, descendants, but um, yeah, I enjoyed the Air Force. It was a great career. I did family medicine and also what's called flight medicine, flight surgery, where you're helping on the operational side. So I had wonderful experiences, saw the world. Like, yeah, it was great. I enjoyed the mission, which was the mission, which is, as a doctor, we help our air crew stay well, right? And there's no politics involved, right? Like the mission is whatever the mission is, but our job is air crew safety, making sure flyers, and anyone supporting the flyers are fit to fly and fit to fight and fit to serve and fit to go down range, right? So if someone goes down range and has a medical issue that we could have prevented, that's the money right there, because you got to get that person out of hostile territory, with U.S. funds, and risk other people in the process. So the VA is a little bit different. So the mission of the VA is not to serve the war fighter. It's maybe on paper it sounds like to serve the veteran, but it's a political cabinet position, and under whatever administration it is. So there really isn't this overriding goal to make people healthier. And that's kind of why I came to the VA, was there's more diabetes, more obesity in veterans than non-veterans. And you're like, what the heck? Right? These people used to be uber fit. Why is there more diabetes and obesity in this group than
Exactly.
civilians? Like, what the hell? What are we doing wrong? So I was brought into the VA, was actually recruited there to help make veterans healthier. And that's the
Yeah.
paper that'll be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So let's teach them metabolic health. Let's not just follow an
Yeah.
algorithm of giving them more and more and more meds and fit these checklists. That's what I did. And that was really not viewed well in the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I left. Not under good terms, but I did my work and I'm publishing my data, and needed time to recover from that. And I'm up here in Northern Maine working in a small community, as family doctors are trained to do, to serve the community that they serve without a bunch of protocols, metrics, guidelines, administrators. I can go to work, do the right thing, see my patient in the cultural context and what they want out of life, and go home and do good work. So that's what that's what medicine is. That's why Fumi. That's why you went into it. Like, why did you go into medicine? Like, it wasn't to follow some clinical metrics of an administrator. What it was? What
Dr.
like what?
Cucuzzella, thank you so much for your service because what you did and what you do is so important, is so fundamental to medicine at large, and you really are an inspiration. Even from your story, I almost joined the Air Force myself, doing the medical residency and doing the whole thing. I chose a different path, but I was this close, as in I was right there.
What's your med school debt now? It's like,
Don't get me started.
don't
I
give
would
me. Okay,
love
that's
I
for
would love a sponsor to go ahead and just take care of that for me, please. Don't threaten me with a good time, please. But it's up there, and I don't know. And the funny part is, I did come from an army family. I have a brother and a sister in the army. As in, my brother just became like lieutenant colonel. I just went for his graduation in Germany, like in January. So I was right there to do that. I actually did NJROTC
oh,
in
nice.
Indiana, so I could have joined the Navy, I could have joined the Army, I could have joined the Air Force. So I had lots of options, and I don't know, it was difficult, hard headed. I decided to go in a different direction, completely different direction. But I'm very grateful for, SEBA, for the education I was given. And I'm grateful for Newark Beth for the residency I was given. And I'm grateful for the hospitals I work for now, that I get to, practice medicine and, steer my patients in the right direction, especially as I'm going into this new field of medicine, even newer than has ever been seen. I would love to get you on board for that. It's kind of under wraps, but we'll talk about it later. As far as medicine goes, but no, as in I think that you did the right thing, and I can't wait to see your research come out. Especially considering how how meticulous you are with medicine. So I want to see what your data looks like. I'm foaming at the mouth to get my hands on it because I want to know, what exactly did you find?
Yeah. So
And was this
what
the
we
paper
found?
you
Yeah, this was
presented
the we
in Boca?
presented in
Okay.
Boca. So
Mm,
doctors are busy, and communities don't have massive resources, and you have very short visits. And if everyone had a metabolic health coach, it'd be glorious. And if we had hour visits, and I mean, that would be wonderful if whatever your health insurance or federal government or the Department of Veterans Affairs had that. But the reality for primary care is you have 20 minutes maybe, and they've got 12 things on their agenda, and half of them are administrative things that you just have to do for your quality metrics. So what we did was I just came into the clinic, and I mean 80% of my veterans have some degree of metabolic syndrome. And so, oh, do you know you have metabolic syndrome? And they look at you like you have two heads. Some were fully diabetic, but a lot of them were kind of pre-diabetic, and they didn't know that that was an issue. And they had all, high triglycerides, low HDL on 3 blood pressure medicines, lipid lower. So they just all like check, 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 like that's just coming in for their meds. And I'm like, well, you got this thing called insulin resistance. Do you know what that is?
Always theirs, never. They
You're
never.
like, do you want to understand a little bit about that? Well, sure, doc. Break out a clipboard, draw a few little pictures, and you can get out of this. You just answered how, because it's, the more carbohydrates, the more insulin, the more insulin, the more resistance, the more resistance, the more resist. You just kind of like whatever, however the conversation's going. So how do you get out of that? And they would eloquently tell me, and then well, let's do that. And I give them the low carb on a budget book. See you back in 6 months. I mean,
They
that's
just
it, right?
like,
And yeah, that's it, right? You don't have much more time for anything else. And these aren't people coming to a weight loss clinic. They're not self-selecting, I want to lose weight. They're just coming in for their regular care, right? Because they're kind of mandated to come in. And what we saw was, you know, just by doing that, the average weight loss of like 300 plus veterans was like 10 pounds. But the metabolic markers really moved. Like over half of the insulin users, well, this is with less and less meds, right? So we're reducing meds. Over half of the veterans reduced or got off meds. A1Cs reduced, and they all kind of moved to different categories. They moved from fully diabetic to pre-diabetic, pre-diabetic to normal. So they were all the trend was going in the right direction. So if you even looked at it, I'd have to look at the chart, but the obesity. So of the patients who have BMIs over 30, 40% of them at 6 months or 10 months was our final data points, because they vary on when they came back. So the average for the final visit was about 10 months, and 40% were less than met criteria for not being obese. Without GLP-1s, we were actually off ramping GLP-1s
That
because the
was my
VA
next
didn't cover
question.
GLP-1s for obesity. And that's
James.
part of the reason I left, is that even for the most severe obesity, they didn't consider that. I mean, I believe GLP-1s have a role in the very severe patients who are they doing everything, they're struggling, right? So it's an effective therapy if they understand the diet, right? Like if you're doing everything else right, but these people cannot turn off that hunger. They're on like mirtazapine or prednisone. They're on treatments that are just driving their hunger. So some people need that. I mean, it's like the Hail Mary pass, maybe, but these people have severe BMIs of 60. So there are people who, yeah, I mean, what else are you going to do for these folks, right? And some have already had gastric bypasses, right? And they're gaining weight again. Like, and you give them the education, give them the education, give them the education. But even if when they understand that, some still, right? I mean, you've all seen it. Some people still struggle.
sure, of
Fair to
course.
say? Of course,
It's
right? They're humans. Physiologic disease. They struggle.
Is your
So,
presentation that you did at Boca public? I know the Boca presentation isn't public, but the presentation itself, have you done it elsewhere? And is it recorded where people can watch it
it's not
online?
other than Boca, but I'd be glad to share the slides
Okay,
with you
that
all.
would be
We can
cool.
wonderful.
share the
Maybe we
slides and even the
can,
poster.
yeah, maybe we can
And
put
the
that.
paper will be out. Hopefully, I mean, it's all approved. So, final edits, review. So it should actually be, by the time you post this podcast, it'll probably be up that you can just download the paper.
Okay,
And that might be the best thing.
great.
Yeah. So not all succeed, right? So the goal is, right, you're coach, Amelia, right? You try to keep it simple, plain, and clear and understandable. And by the grace of God, go and we see how they do. The saboteurs are there for many. They work night shift. They're stressed now. They left the VA. Now they're a cop. So that's now they're working night shift as a cop in New York City or someplace, right? That like how do you like?
The
Whoa,
cortisol is through the roof.
full
Like,
catastrophe of cortisol. So yeah, so whenever they would struggle, they mostly it was just hedonic eating, stress, going through a divorce, like all the night shift. A lot of these guys who are vets, they leave because they kind of know all this alpha male work, right? So they leave the VA and they take security jobs, or they become Secret Service. They become these like FBI agents. They become jobs that they're not like going out and farming. Which some do. The smart ones do. They leave like special forces and then they go like start a small organic farm in the woods. Those guys do good. They're
Yeah.
smart. They know that
They're
that's the way
touching
out.
grass all the time, right, Fumi?
Yeah, the ones who like go back into the belly of the beast struggle,
So,
but
have
that's
you
what they
heard
know. That's kind of what they know. But that's another story. But yeah,
yeah. Have you
there is
heard
a way
that
out of your
term,
swim. Hmm.
touching grass?
No, no.
It's
But what? Yeah, tell me what
it's
what
I
you
would
mean.
say millennial term for earthing, and
Okay,
a lot of people talk about earthing. You just touch the earth with your feet and your bare skin. But
absolutely.
nowadays, social media has got people touching grass, which is just
They're
another
true.
way of reconnecting with our Mother Earth and how healing it is. We can all attest to it, right? We always feel better after we go to the beach or the park or,
Well, like
you
I've got
know?
videos of barefoot running, so like I'm all in, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is
Let's talk about your running.
Yeah, here's my mat here I stand on. It's got these little magical pods.
Get
It
out
says
of
magical in
here.
bare feet.
I'm
Yeah.
I
on
mean,
bare
you
feet
have
right now too, but I wear those Vibram shoes, the
Yeah.
five fingers.
But yeah, you had them in Boca. Yep.
You remember?
Of course. I've got a couple pairs sitting in there in
Yeah,
my gym,
we were talking
right
about it.
right next to this room.
Yeah,
I'm
so
such
let's get
for
into this marathon thing because Fumi and I was telling Mark before you got on, Fumi, that we had had a text message exchange a few months back about carb loading for athletes. And I was throwing, Tim Noakes at her and like Mark Cucuzzella. I'm like, oh no, Tim Noakes, he rips that chapter out of his book when he talks about carb loading. And so I want to get to the meat of this. I want to ask because a lot of people want to know, and there's nuance. I know there's not one magic pill or magic bullet, but what is your experience directly, Mark, with carb loading as a marathon runner? And how has your opinion or your experience changed over the years since you've been doing it for so long?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the athlete, or the citizen, really. So, someone who is massive, it has nothing to do with running. Someone who is massively insulin sensitive can eat a lot of carbohydrates. So I ran in college. I was massively insulin sensitive. We ate more carbohydrates than the football team, and we were fine, right? So because we could throw carbs in, massively insulin sensitive, we were running 80 miles a week at University of Virginia, and then go to the gym, right? So we were churning and burning, right? We could eat all that stuff, but we were competitive athletes, right? So that's like, and the people that now, when you see them on social media, eating massive amounts of carbohydrates, ingesting, not eating, because most of them are gels. People are taking up to like 120 grams of carbs an hour, during competition. But these are not your recreational athletes. These are the best in the world. They're the 0.1%, right? Because they're elite athletes, right? So they're not, the one watching a YouTube video lining up for his local 5K, right? We know that way of eating works for that type of person until it doesn't, right? So it works for a while and then it doesn't. So, like for performance on one given day, you're like flying close to the sun. So if you're massively ingesting that many carbs, what you hear is like every now and then their gut just goes, right? So if they try a little too much, right, then they're just like throwing up. So there's a risk reward. And if your reward is you're going to win the world championships at the Ironman, and that's your career, like that's worth the risk, right? But most people, 99% of people who are out there at a triathlon or run or walk or ruck, they're doing it for their health, right? They're not winning money. And so, like the person who's insulin resistant is carbohydrate intolerant. So that person needs to fuel with fat. The 18-year-old kid on the high school football team or cross country team, that kid's metabolically flexible. So that kid can fuel a bit more carbs, but they can drive on both sides of the road depending on what they want to do. But again, like if you're someone who's even, let's just go to the performance athletes, so everyone has to kind of learn how their own body is optimized, right? And Tim Noakes and Andrew Kutnick published. Jeff Volek was on that paper. So maintaining stable blood glucose is really the holy grail. So people don't bonk because they're out of energy. So and I'll do this during long events. So like 10 grams of carbs an hour, because your blood glucose starts dipping if you don't have any carbs, right? And you're exercising pretty hard, and then your brain senses, oh man, like my body is like in trouble. So then it starts shutting down motor units, right? The brain always wants to protect you. So trickling in a little carbohydrates brings that blood glucose back. And like I've done the race twice in South Africa, which Tim Noakes has written about, like is in his Lore of Running. It's called the Comrades Marathon. It's like a 55 to 60 mile uh, marathon run in South Africa, up down hills. I mean, like crazy amount of hills. And at the aid stations there, the race is like 100 years old. There's little Dixie cups of soda. And I'm telling you, the shit's rocket fuel. Like when you're like dragging to the next aid station, one little hit of Coke, right? And this is old Coke, which is more glucose. Like the original Coke is like more glucose. Like the South African Coke is glucose. You're like, oh, I feel good. And then you got crashing. And all you need is like a little shot because you're never done. Like if people think, oh, I'm done, I'm out of energy, I got to sit on the curb and feel sorry for them. No, no, just everyone knows that who's done these events. Like they think they're done because their brain is like, I'm done. And then someone gives them like a candy. And then, oh man, like I got another win, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
came back from the dead. But really, you need about 10 grams, if you're doing long term, just to stabilize blood glucose. That's like nothing, right? 10 grams of carbs is, like 2 ounces of a little shot of juice. But again, if it's about performance, you better practice. If you read, David Roach or someone who wins Leadville is consume, he practices that, right? So he's trained his gut to do that because he knows that that's how his best odds of winning the race. He's a sugar burner. Sugar burners train their body to burn as much sugar as possible. Like that's their fuel. But if you're a fat optimizer, because you don't deal with sugar well, you train your body to burn fat at massive rates. So my body can burn fat at tremendous rates because of years and years of low carbohydrate living. And I've run fasted, right? So my body by nature has learned to, but that didn't happen in a day, right? So if you give a carb burner, tell them not to eat carbs and go run the next week, they're going to feel horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next 3 months, if they stay with it, they will upregulate it's called fat adaptation, so your body will learn the environment, will adapt to the environment that it's in. I mean, that's the human biologic organism. We always adapt to the environment that we're in.
I want to make
Does that
sure
make
that
sense?
yes, that makes sense. I want to make sure everybody
Okay.
heard you that you said you run fasted. Is that
Well,
correct?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I wake up, I exercise, I run, and I don't run every day now, being a few months shy of 60. Run one day, and then I carry weight the next day because my body has a lot of miles on it, right? So we have to respect that. If I want to keep running I like running, but I know that if I ran every day, I've got so many miles, I need more strength training,
Mm-hmm.
and the carrying the weight is strength training, which allows me to run the next day. But whatever it is, everyone finds their routine. I'm a morning exerciser, and so like I don't. I wake up and I'm fat adapted, so my body's making energy from body fat because my insulin's low. So I'm not waking up hungry. I have coffee, of course, so I need coffee, and I have electrolytes. So like I'll make,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a true believer. It's not a belief; it's science. So I think creatine is like everyone should be taking creatine. So I'll mix in the morning before my coffee, just a flask, and it'll be creatine and an electrolyte. You could pick whichever one, LMNT, Relight, or you can hydrate just some. So creatine and electrolyte, shake. So prehydrate, just because your body gets dehydrated at night. And if I just woke up and just had coffee, that's probably like not the smartest thing to do. So I'll drink electrolyte with creatine, 5 grams, but some people say 10 now. I don't know. Pick whatever cheap bulk, um, and then coffee, and then go out the door, and then I have bacon and eggs. So never get tired. At my hospital, they make the most amazing bacon and eggs, and I don't have to cook it. So I just show up, $3.15 plate. They know every day. They're like, Mark, here's your bacon and eggs.
You're
So
winning.
did you ever run a
Isn't
marathon?
that great? Like in the hospital, right? Like, yeah, I
You're
don't
like
have to cook it, clean
$3.15.
dishes. I show up, $3, and it's like delicious.
It's like that's what's
Oven
the one
baked
part I
bacon,
miss.
it's like crispy,
I
better than
love
any
oven
bacon.
baked.
I was
I've
like,
been doing
no,
that a
this
lot.
is. I'd pay $10. I get the hospital discount, right? So $3. It's like the best $3 I spend every day.
So Mark, did you ever run low carb as when you were doing more marathons?
Absolutely, yeah.
And
So
how did
for
you notice
decades,
things change once you were fat adapted?
I mean, performance wise, I was actually better because I never was worried. Like I would run out of, I like just had this confidence that I'm fine. Like I'm not worried. Everyone's worried about their carbohydrate loading. I was like, I'm fine. I just show up and run. And the food and the fuel was not like an equation or a variable that I knew could go wrong. Like everyone's got their fueling strategy during a marathon. For example, the Boston Marathon's Monday. I ran like 28 Boston Marathons, and probably well over half of those was low carb because I had diabetes. And everyone's got they're going lining up with all their gels, and they got all this shit all over them. I'd show up with my 5 fingers, and if I felt like you use your brain, if I felt like I needed a hit of Gatorade, I didn't need gels or goos. I never had any of that. But I would take some little, because you're burning the engine pretty hard. I would take little hits of Gatorade, every 20 minutes, just a couple ounces, right? But not like I needed it. But I was
Right.
never worried. That was never a variable that would matter. I mean, you could do other stupid stuff like run too fast in the beginning, but with experience, you don't make just mistakes that are just stupid mistakes. So never had a bad day because you would never have a bad day. Everything was predictable as
Yeah.
long as you showed up trained
So
and not injured.
I have a question that I bet other people want to know. You said you were diabetic. Were you overweight?
No, no, because I wasn't making insulin. So when I was diagnosed as a lot of type diabetes, I was losing weight. And dudes don't go to, right, for me. Do young active males go to doctors, or probably most time not, unless they get, no, dudes don't go to doctors. But I was in the military. We're mandated to go every year or to get your labs, all this stuff. So you just like, you got to show up, and my glucose was in diabetes range, and they're looking at me like this, and they're like, that doesn't make sense. And so they drew an A1C as diabetic range, and then I went over to the endocrine clinic, and they put a CGM on me. And back then it was just like it was like a Wright Pat Air Force Base. So they put this thing on you just to see what you're doing. And I was like high and then crashing and high and crashing, and then I understood why I was waking up at 2 in the morning needing more carbs.
I'm
Yeah,
addicted.
so like I saw that, and you couldn't unsee that. So
Yeah, I
that
just
that
think it's really important to talk about the different how diabetes or prediabetes can present differently for different people
absolutely.
and how
We,
it physically looks, right? We
yes,
have this stereotype.
we miss
Yeah.
people who don't make insulin. So they shouldn't be both called the same thing, right? So if you don't make insulin, you become hyperglycemic and catabolic. You're like losing weight, eating like crazy amounts of calories because you don't make insulin. Without insulin, you cannot gain weight. They call it diabulimia. Like, so these type ones now who want to get skinny, they stop taking their insulin. It's terrifying. Right? They call it diabulimia. Now, the type two, the insulin resistant, is making massive amounts of insulin. Right? The result is high sugar, but the physiology is like completely opposite. Their body's in storage mode. They're making too much insulin, but we tend to, like, if they you get a bias because if you show up and you're 40 with diabetes, people think, well, you're type 2, let's, and your A1C is 10 or something, let's give you metformin, let's give you an SGLT2 inhibitor which can drive your insulin to zero point 0, and then you get acidotic. They just assume you're type 2, and they don't test your insulin. But like anyone who looks atypical, as Fumi knows as a doctor, is like, this something is atypical about this case. So I better do the right labs to make the right diagnosis, which isn't a $20 test and you can make the diagnosis. Are you making insulin? Yes or no? And if you're like the kids we study, they're making massive amounts of insulin, the obese kids, massive. They're insulin resistant. They're not diabetic yet, but they kind of are. They're just making massive amounts of insulin, but they're young. They're just storing energy. And ultimately they become diabetic, but they're, type 2, but they're hyperinsulinemic. And the
So this.
hyperinsulinemic patients, the other ones
Mhm.
who get missed, if listeners are this or you, so if your beta cells are making massive, like I had a patient today whose A1C, she shows up first visit, her A1C is 12. And she used to be 400 pounds as a type 2 diabetic. And she's been losing weight. She shows up first visit. She had been in the ER and then she needed a primary. And she's massively losing weight and her glucoses are going up. So is she making insulin or not making insulin? Now she's lost 200 pounds without dieting. What
Yep.
happened to her beta cells?
They're gone. They burnt
They're
out.
gone. Right now she's not making. So what was her treatment for her?
Insulin.
Insulin. Yes, you need insulin. Long acting insulin. You need insulin. And she wasn't argumentative. She's like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're not making any insulin anymore. She's like lost 200 pounds without dieting. She's not making insulin. So she's like a type 1, but it's not. She's insulin resistant but now she's probably more insulin sensitive because she's 200 pounds down. But that's the path. Like the amount of insulin produced, you can only make so much insulin for so many years of your life. Then your beta cells and your pancreas gets filled with fat too. So the glucagon takes over. But we just need to be better about not just categorizing people in, in these categories where 23 categories exist.
Sure.
Right.
So many categories exist, as in it took a long time for us to, in the medical field, to kind of divest from that non-insulin diabetic, non-insulin deficient diabetic, and then the insulin deficient diabetic, knowing that there's other syndromes of diabetics, the MADIs and the LADAs. It took a long time because so many patients were coming in with a very atypical presentation, and we were like, we can't seem to put our finger on this. Like, why is this 40-year-old man coming in with new onset diabetes, and how come this diabetic needs insulin now but didn't show up in their teen, like as a teenager, as they typically do. So it took a lot of like looking at fasting insulin, not just A1C, but looking at fructosamine, looking at the antibodies, looking at the islet cells, looking at all this stuff to really make sure that we understand and have a really good grasp on diabetes. And so it can be really frustrating because even that definition of how to diagnose it and how to get on top of it has changed just greatly in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, compared to 50 years of knowing, yeah, the A1C and all the sugar and what are we doing with the islet cells? What are we doing with the islet cells now?
Yeah, we need to be insulin centric and not glucose centric. So, like,
Yes.
we've always just looked at glucose and somehow, like, made a diagnosis. So the diabetes is a problem with insulin,
Or
where glucose is an effect of it. So, like, if hypothyroid, right, you measure their thyroid hormone,
right.
right? So, like every other endocrine disorder. So, I mean, just think about it. Like, if I'm an endocrinologist, right, and if it's whatever, whether it's thyroid or cortisol, you're measuring the hormone of disturbance.
I'm sure.
And
Not
diabetes insulin is the hormone that's disturbed. Let's measure that hormone.
right.
I mean, I don't know.
That
It's
makes
we all
that
know
makes
it's illogical.
honestly, it makes sense because we're thinking about it now. But like we don't, we can't, I can't speak
And
to
there's
how
no
it was thought of then when they were kind of like figuring this out. That, oh, this is the hormone and this is the effect. And so it makes sense for us to look at it now because we know that the way we've looked at it before is not capturing everybody. It's not encapsulating the entire topic. And so in this case, having a fasting insulin is now considered so much more important than the A1C, because the A1C can be falsely high or low depending on liver disease, kidney disease, hemoglobinopathies, iron deficiency. And so it's not a accurate measure anymore. But what it is, looking at the insulin, looking at your fasting
Absolutely.
insulin, and even in different in demographics like pregnant people and that kind of thing, that will tell us much more than anything else.
I'm so glad that two doctors are saying the same thing on the show at the same time, because one of the things we've talked about a lot, very often, is the importance of patients knowing how to advocate for the tests that they need, right? And oftentimes they don't know to ask, so can I get a fasting insulin test, doc? And when they do, sometimes, Fumi and I have talked about this, the doctor's like, oh no, we'll just test your A1C. If your A1C is fine, you're fine. And I can't emphasize enough to folks who are watching, if you are concerned about your blood sugar, your diabetes, if you're concerned about blood pressure or cholesterol or heart health, please just tell your doctor, hey, so you work for me, right? I would like you to order a fasting insulin test.
And
Thank
you don't
you.
even need, now you can go direct to consumer.
True.
Yeah.
Dave Feldman's Own
Yep.
Your Labs or also, I mean, if you know you don't want to just start ordering your own labs random and get random stuff. And like, but it's your human right to know your labs.
Mm-hmm.
It's $20. Like any of us can order a fasting insulin for, I think it's like $20, maybe less.
I was just looking it up the other day. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not expensive and you
No, no,
don't
it's
need your
not weird.
doctor to
No,
sign
no,
off
you
on it.
just
Yeah.
go to LabCorp draw site
Mm-hmm.
and get it drawn.
I don't know. This culture of patients, people owning their health, owning their labs, and getting a second opinion, especially if you're concerned about your health and you're not sure if your primary is like, addressing what you think should be addressed, or, something not adding up. I like the culture of, double checking, triple checking, doing your own, your own homework, because it really galvanizes patients to kind of take, immediacy on their health. And that could only be a good thing. I think we are too much in a society of just kind of going, oh, well, the government told us to, eat this type of diet. Well, we saw how that went. And then, and we're like, oh, yeah, but, I'm doing it the way that, we've always doing it. And then you kind of look at your health and like, this is not the way that I want to live. So then you say, okay, so what can I do? And I think that that can be the most confusing part for most patients, because it's just like, we're getting so many conflicting, we're like, my doctor says this, you guys are saying this, the government is saying this, chat gpt is saying that, as in, it can be very confusing to a person. And that's why I think listening to your body is very important. If you don't feel good, um and that was what your definition of metabolic health was, as in living a life, a disease-free life.
Mm. Yeah, I
And so
think
if
it's
you don't
something like
feel
that.
good, it's important, to kind of like galvanize, like, get yourself out there and get the results that you need to get. Come hell or high water.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're spot on there. I don't know when we said that. Living a disease-free life is metabolic health.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
probably. I mean, like, there's a lot under the hood there, but that's the end result.
right.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
one
because
of
you could have good metabolic health, and you could get something weird happen to you. I mean, maybe
sure.
by your genetics, you get some strange, weird cancer that's out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
That's always scary for me, as in, imagine doing a decades of eating well and doing well and doing the running and eating the fiber and eating the protein and taking the probiotic, and then next thing you're hit with like an angiosarcoma of like the back of
yeah,
your
that's
neck,
like
and you're just
totally
like,
out of your
what was it
control.
for? What was this all for? That's always a very scary thing for me. Like, what do you do with this?
And that's truly atypical. But yeah,
So, as far as a resource for people to implement changes, one of the pieces of work that you have produced, Mark, you mentioned it earlier, the low carb on any budget, right? And
you can download it.
you can download it for free. We'll have the link in the show notes. And I think I told you a while back, the grocery list that I give my
Yeah, yours is
clients,
really nice too. I
I
like that.
I shrunk it down to one page, but it
Oh,
was
nice.
100% inspired by your booklet. And I've created my own worksheets and stuff for people, but we'll make sure that people have that, because you don't just give a grocery list. You don't just give the green, yellow, and red food lists. You talk about why, right? You
Yeah, the
talk about
book
how,
explains why.
and there's even some recipes in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not one size fits all, right? The book is specifically for insulin resistant people. We're not here to demonize carbohydrates or grains. There are plenty of people around the world who can eat that stuff just fine. But the people who come to our clinic are not fine, right? Like, no, no. They, the
Yeah.
well people don't, again, you live a disease free life. The disease free life people aren't coming to Fumi's hospital or into my clinic. They're out living their life. We see
Yeah.
the people who have disease. So we're, just selection bias. The majority of people coming in to see us need the book. So it's
Right.
fair to say.
Do you feel
Yeah.
that people think that we are just kind of like Chicken Little, like, the sky is falling and like, your diet is killing you and the carbs are killing you? As in, do you feel like people just because we have that selection bias of seeing the most insulin resistant of patients, the most obese of patients, the patients that have the most chronic and debilitating disease, it can be really uh it can really be really, it could be a bit of a downer as a physician personally. We're talking about burnout, before before we started the episode. We see a lot of these types of patients. It's not always the healthiest patients that we're seeing.
Yeah, I try to find joy, and that's
Hmm.
why I'm always behind. So I'm sure you're in the hospitals, you're not getting behind. But I tend to always get, behind because like you never want to like half explain something. If you're gonna go and try to explain this to them, you have to explain it right,
Hmm.
and it takes some time because if you kind of half explain something to someone, like nothing will change.
I bet you
Yeah, like
ask.
I mean, for example, my
Yeah.
last patient today, and but luckily it was the last patient I ran late. So he's 420 pounds, um, and he has an insulin pump, but he doesn't understand insulin resistance. So he has a closed loop CGM to a tandem pump, and the pump only understands glucose. So he's like, yeah, this I'm using U. He's using U200 in his pump, which is like a constant. He's so insulin resistant, he needs to use concentrated insulin in his pump, or else his pump runs out. Right? It's like having a what's the least gas efficient vehicle? It's like having a small gas tank in an F-150 pickup, right? So they use concentrated insulin. He's up to like 200 units of insulin a day, and he's like, yeah, I feel horrible. I just keep gaining weight. And because his insulin pump just keeps pumping more and more and more insulin to clear his glucose. So the pump doesn't understand insulin resistance. It'll just keep pumping out more and more glucose to store more and more insulin to store the glucose. And so like that was an hour. Okay, we need to go and like debrief why this is why you feel this way. This is why you're gaining weight. Insulin stores, right? Like if we're going to be able to access your body fat, we need insulin lower. There's no way around that. Like insulin stores, period. To burn fat as fuel, we need insulin lower. So we need to change your settings. You can't autopilot correction. You're gonna have to take control of your food and your pump. Like you got to totally and he's an engineer, so he's like that makes sense. Like we have to reverse engineer how you got here. And this isn't going to be easy and it isn't going to be quick, but this is not working for you. You can't keep using more and more and more and more insulin because then it's like giving more alcohol to an alcoholic. I mean, fair to say, if you're
Yeah.
if you're resistant to whatever it is, I'm coffee resistant, right? So like I need 4 cups, right? I'm 35 years in medicine and military and night shift work and right? So it's like 1 cup in med school, then it's 2 cups. So I'm caffeine resistant.
Can I
So
say you deserve it though? You deserve
I
every
do, but I'm
single
okay. That's like,
cup.
I'll roll with that.
A
I
lot.
like coffee and I only drink good coffee.
So
But
speaking of engineers, everybody likes to talk about Dave Feldman. But I'm going to actually ask you, were you involved? I should know this. Were you involved with the cholesterol code documentary at all?
I was in one of the little group interviews. I don't know if that made the film. I actually just got a message today that you can watch it on Amazon. So that I'm going to stream it on Amazon this weekend. And I think if enough people like stream it and purchase it, it kind of goes up the queue. So like I've got a couple emails that says download, stream, so
Yeah.
help the movie. So like even though I don't have time to watch it this weekend, I'll maybe after this I'll just go hit purchase. I think I know how to
Well,
purchase it.
that's why I
I don't
was
know what
asking if you were going to be in the Seattle area on April 20th
Yeah. Oh,
because
they're
I'm,
doing a screening.
yeah, I'm doing the screening.
No, there was like
Yeah.
a round table with like Anthony Chaffee, Michael Eads, myself, and who else was? I think Brett Sure was in there. But I don't know. They probably had so much footage. I don't know if that made it or not. So I'll watch it
Yeah.
and see if I have a cameo in the movie.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't really care. I'm glad the movie's out, and I don't get into the cholesterol arguments with people because I'm just like so done arguing with people. I don't argue, but I'm about insulin and about diabetes and what people do with their LDLs and are they worried about it or not? It's just so
That's a
like
smart move.
I'll die on the hill of helping people understand insulin resistance and their diabetes.
You got to
Yeah.
pick
If
your
you want to
Which is
lower your LDL,
relative.
if you're worried about it,
It's
then lower your
all,
LDL. If you're not worried about it, then don't
there.
lower
You
your LDL. Like patient decision, right? They have
yeah.
right of refusal.
I like how you picked a niche in metabolic medicine and decided, hey, I'm the insulin guy, and don't ask me about nothing else.
Well,
So
they will. They'll ask my opinion, but I'm not going to get, I'm not dogmatic about anything. But there's a lot of nuance to that, right?
yeah,
So
it
you
really
have
is.
bad vascular disease, small LDLs are like shots on goal, right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
in that group of people, yes, absolutely. The data shows they have blood vessel injury. We need to do everything for them, right? There's 30 holes in the roof, and LDL might be one hole in the roof, but you better deal with your diabetes because that's the biggest.
Yeah,
But
that's
we're
what.
all arguing about this when like the bigger they're stressed or like just deal with all the holes in the roof.
Yeah,
But
and
this
the
is
the way
important.
you're going at it is I feel like, and I'm not a doctor, but as a patient and as an advocate, right? Insulin is ground zero. Understanding insulin is going to help you understand your cholesterol. It's going to help you understand your blood
Absolutely.
pressure. It's going to help you understand your mental, state, your anxiety, depression, fatigue, cortisol. I really do believe that insulin is more of the master hormone than cortisol as far as it helping us pick apart, the pieces and put together the puzzle, right, of our metabolic health.
And I'll even get even more simpler than that, Amelia. Like, so we can look at all, do we lower your cholesterol, lower your sugar, check this or that, do this test or that. There's only one thing I can tell a patient, which across every single study, no argument, this has been shown to make you all cause mortality, right? So that's important. Like, what do you die? Do you die or do you live? Not less death of this, but more of this, and better health span. There's only one thing I can tell a patient to do in a room that we know absolutely that benefits them.
Sleep.
That exercise.
I was close. I was
Sleep
close.
might be, but the sleep data is not good. But like, no matter what's going on with someone, if they move, there's no downside.
Hmm.
And there's only one marker. Actually, we can maybe come finish on this because we all talk about all these side things. If there's one marker that I could pick to predict who's going to be alive in a year and who's going to thrive in a year, it's not their cholesterol, it's not their A1C, it's not their cortisol level, it's not their insulin level. It's actually how many metabolic equivalents are they able to do today? Right? So if they're well and fit and can shovel snow and do all that stuff, their odds of being alive, I mean, that's like 8 metabolic equivalents or something. Like
Hmm.
racing a marathon is like 15 mets, right? No one's doing that in age 70. But if they can do physical work, the one who's 1 met is, I'm more like 1.5 now because I'm standing. 1 met is sitting on a chair. And if your maximum ability to do any physical work is bed to the bathroom, you ain't going to be here in a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to
Even
be
with perfect blood pressure, low cholesterol, right? So like sometimes we just say, okay, let's focus on this. Let's get you stronger because at the end of the day, it'll help their metabolic health. Because like I haven't met a patient who said, man, I wish I wasn't so effing strong, right? Like they all want to be stronger because they're all getting frail and weak.
For sure.
That's why they're in the hospital.
Right.
Hmm.
And but it all comes, that's part of metabolic health. But I think we forget about that with all these tests and technology is like old school. Can you do work?
Can you do a squat?
Yeah,
Exactly.
can you do anything?
Can you
And if you
squat
can't
down
do it,
and get back
That's
up without falling?
yeah, over here to the left is,
do you remember?
hex bar deadlift, rowing machine, true form treadmill, kettlebells. You're like, I mean, I'm an old guy, right? But this is my space.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to do that stuff. No shit.
So they call that the get up and go test. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
That
yeah. Like you watch it. Can
yeah,
you get up off a chair? Yeah, I referred a patient to hospice today because he has an ejection fraction of 15%, and his get up and go was about 3 minutes. He's
that's
getting weak.
that's not
And
great.
like, no, it's okay. This isn't failure. You need help.
Yeah, yeah.
You need
Yeah.
Intervention
help.
immediately.
It's not, we need to help you. You're eligible for help.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for those folks who aren't aware of this metabolic equivalent thing, we'll make sure to put a link to a chart in the show notes so
Yeah, you
people
can
can,
Google those.
yeah.
Kind of the like 1.0 is sitting in bed. Like this is like your energy expenditure, what over your basal metabolic rate. It's like your car. You got first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. Like say you had 15 gears in a car. Like what gear can you get to? What is your top end gear? Is it 2 out of 15? If you're not doing too good.
We need to get you to at least four.
Yeah, yeah, move forward, right? But an 80-year-old's not going to be an F1 car, right? That's just not happening. But it gives you margin. Like if you're 80 and you still can get to gear 8 of 15, man, your odds of not being in a care home are pretty good.
I like that.
You might die of nothing, right? Natural causes, right? So your margin between you and the care home is like pretty high.
Well, as we wrap up, I was going to ask you our final question, but you might have just answered it before I even shared it. So at the end of each episode, we ask our guest, what is the most magical metabolic tip or idea? Of course, not medical advice, that has transformed your life for the better that you want to share with other folks, whether it's a personal or professional tip. But, we're called the magic of metabolic health because Fumi and I really believe in the power of nutrition, lifestyle, movement, community, and it all matters. So, what's your magical metabolic tip, Mark?
Keep your muscle,
Keep your muscle.
which is exercise and eat protein,
Yep.
right? Just keep your muscle.
Big
I
And
love
circle.
it.
that like a lot will take care of itself if you take care of your muscular system. And it
Yep.
takes more work as you age.
Yep.
Yeah, and you have to do things different as you age. But just whatever that is for you and your needs, right? Everyone's a little bit different, but mind your muscle, take care of your muscle. Without
Yeah,
that, like it's game over.
Yep.
And muscle is under your control. It's the only organ system that I've got conscious control over. Right? My heart, everything else is kind of background. My digestion, heart, breathing, neurologic function. I don't have direct control over that, but I have control over what I do with my body and what I put
Yeah.
in my body.
Yep.
there.
And I don't think that's like a weird message. I think a lot of people, even in the metabolics, we do all this stuff, and then we come back to it. That's kind of like the holy grail. There's
Hmm. I'm learning too. I just read the book Breath by James Nestor, and I've been breathing a lot, like consciously.
I sleep with tape on my
Me
mouth. I
too.
sleep like,
It's
yeah, and I breathe
mouth papers.
exclusively through my
I'm the
nose when
same
I
with mouth
exercise.
papers.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a little piece of tape on your mouth, and you sleep like the dead. Even if you don't have sleep apnea, if you do, it can get rid of about half a mild sleep apnea because your tongue will stay in the. Most people sleep with their mouth open, tongue falls back, they snore, they obstruct. Little piece of cheap medical tape, right? For me, in the nurses' days, a little cheap paper tape, right? A little strip like this. You don't need any fancy stuff. And it takes a few weeks before your brain just you wake up in the morning and the piece of tape is still on your mouth and you're like, oh my god, like it was the best because if that happened, you breathed through your nose the whole night. Absolutely, the tape is still on your mouth. Have you experimented with that, Amelia? Taping your mouth at night?
Yeah, I do it every night.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel?
Um, well, I mean, sometimes I get woken up by things like loud noises next to me, but for me, I don't think I snore regularly. I've been told when I'm really, really tired, I will snore a little bit. But also, congestion happens, and I've
Yeah,
noticed
if you
when
can't breathe through
I
your nose,
I had
problem.
a cold a couple months ago, and no, not even a couple months. 4 weeks ago maybe, and I dared myself to tape my mouth shut at night, and I was scared because 'cause I'm thinking, "Well, my nose is
Yeah,
congested.
you
How is
have
this
to
gonna
be
work?"
able to breathe through your nose.
But
Bad idea.
no, it worked.
It worked.
It
Okay.
actually, I think it prevented me from getting
Yeah,
sicker because you know what happens? It's a domino effect. You can't breathe through your nose, then at night your mouth breathing, then you get a sore throat, and then you get a tonsil infection, and it's just one thing after another. And I got better real quick, and I think I'll give credit to some of my supplements too, but that tape, man, it's really quite powerful. And that book, Breath, if you haven't read it, or
that's good.
get the audio book, because they also have breathing exercises at the end, and they're really simple. A lot of them you can do while you're walking. Some of them they say don't do while you're driving. But yeah, it's been really interesting just standing here because I'm not sitting. I'm standing for the podcast today. I've been more conscious of how I'm breathing and where the breath is going into. And that's something that I've learned just in the last 6 weeks. Uh,
Yeah, another Patrick McEwen is called The Oxygen Advantage, was a precursor to Nestor. So that's another really good. He's an Irish physiologist, so his book's really good. A lot of
okay,
the tests that Nestor pulls out are from that book.
nice. I'll put that in the show
Patrick
notes.
McEwen, Oxygen Advantage.
Okay, got it.
Amelia, I was going to ask, what is your metabolic magic that you want to share with us?
Ooh, for me?
Sure.
Well, I can't say the same thing that Mark said, but uh, my version will just be lift heavy stuff.
Oh,
Lift
okay.
heavy stuff and don't make it complicated. As a personal trainer, I intentionally, very consciously don't work in a gym because certain people love the gym and that's great for them. I don't mind going to the gym, honestly, but for my type of client, they want ver- uh, versatility, they want variety, and they want easy access. So lifting heavy stuff doesn't mean you have to buy anything. And if you go on my Instagram at Primitive Pulse Fitness and scroll back a couple years, I have a lot of funny videos of me walking up and down my stairs in my house carrying my 65-pound dog, carrying jugs of water, carrying, laundry baskets with added weight or whatever. I've done kettlebell swings, but without a kettlebell and with a 40-pound jug of water. There's always a way to lift heavy stuff. And for people who are active, like gardeners, people who like to do home repairs, go into your garage and look and see, and you'll find stuff that you can easily lift 25 times and you'll break a sweat. So don't worry about getting expensive equipment or gear. I just say lift heavy stuff every day, a little bit. It doesn't even have to be more than 10 minutes at a time. It could be 5 minutes whenever you have a few moments to spare. So that's my magical tip. How about you, Fumi?
Right. So I'm going to jump off of you both and say, you know what? I need you to push yourself. I need you to push yourself. I want you to wake up every day and think, do I still got it? Because when you wake up and you think to yourself, do I still got it, you try to solve something that, oh, do I still know how to calculate, do I still know how to pick up heavy things, do I still know how to run, do I still know how to stretch, as in just constantly revisiting the tasks and the things that you can do and saying, do I still got it? If you were a fighter, do you think someone can take you? As in, if you are a runner, do you think you can still do that mile? If you are a cooker, can you still flip that pancake? I want people to continue to think, do I still got it? Do I still have that? We use colloquialisms all the time. Do I have that dog in me? That's the
I
type of
love it.
energy that I want to
Yes.
see. Yeah. And so lifting the heavy stuff, keeping up the muscles, and do I still got it? Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Get after it, right? Isn't that what we say? Get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for
Yeah,
it. Get into it.
get after it. It's
I was
all good
like,
in a fun way. No, I love that because like that's life, right? It's embrace the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you?
Great. Well, thank
Great.
you, Dr. Mark Cucuzzella, for joining
Well, I appreciate
us.
both of you. You're all are wonderful, sharing, loving people, sharing this message to the world. So I'm glad to be part.
Yeah.
I consider you both just close, dear friends, and
Oh,
I enjoy every minute speaking with both of you.
yeah.
appreciate you
We
being
really
here
appreciate your time, your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom,
so much.
your willingness to be open, right? To learn and grow no matter how we progress in this world, right? There's always an opportunity to transform for the better. So, since we brought up CGMs, I want to throw out to our listeners that we still have a discount code available at hellolingo.com. And that is the continuous glucose monitor. It's a 2-week device. When you check out, the discount code is Metabolic Magic. It's one word. And if you have any questions about CGMs, make sure you leave a comment or contact us on social media, because I do have a 2-week CGM program that I'm offering to help people get started with understanding their glucose better. So just want to let everybody know about that. And Dr. Fumi, great to
Gonna
see
say,
you. Yeah.
good
Did you
to
want to say
see you
something?
too. Feel like sometimes people still don't understand if they're metabolically being optimized, or not sure if they're insulin resistant, and not really. And like I said, too much many sources out there. Not really sure. If you'd like to do a free metabolic assessment at Dokifumi, that's DOKIFUME.com, is a metabolic assessment that will kind of gear you towards if you think that you need a metabolic practitioner to help you get started in optimizing your metabolic health. That's there for you also.
And is that on the FAQ page? Because I was trying to find it the other day and I can't remember. It's not on the homepage though, right?
Well, let's adjust it to make sure that that's there, because it is on the website. And so it's just at the
Okay.
very bottom, but we can also put a link that directly links you to that assessment to make sure that we, you know, get you in the right direction of, getting on top of your health.
Yeah, I know I saw it. I found it. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Oh yeah, it's on the FAQ page. After the FAQs, there's a metabolic health assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right, folks. Well, thank you again, and thanks to our listeners. My name is Amelia, and we are the magic of metabolic health. Thank you for being part of our village. See you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.
We're bringing healthy back. Them other bros don't know about the facts.